Hi, Carese.
Hey Joe, how's your week going?
It's going all right.
Good.
I just wanted to jump on a call with you to kind of talk about what it's like to basically get a mortgage
Mhm.
and what that process looks like. But first, tell us about yourself, maybe a little bit of background and who you work for, and then we'll get started.
Perfect. Well, I've been a mortgage banker for about 23 years, second generation in the business, and I work for CaliberHome Loans. We are the number one lender in Washington State and the third largest non-bank lender in the company. So big footprint, which means a lot of options for buyers.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people right now that are looking to buy actually. I think
Mhm.
when we were chatting earlier, you mentioned something about mortgage applications being up for the year or for the month. And I think there's also a lot of people, whether they bought a home or not, people do it generally just a couple times in their lifetime.
Mhm.
Is a lot of people are wondering like what the process looks like. And they're wondering, how do they choose a mortgage lender? What are the things that they need to look for? So I wanted to kind of give this time for you to talk just a little bit about your own personal process
Mhm.
and the things that maybe you offer your clients.
Yeah.
That would just be great.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And thanks for the question. It's a great question. And buyers for the most part, the way that I receive my buyers are through referrals of past clients, business professionals like yourself. In lending, most people choose their mortgage banker or broker based on trust. It's a high trust relationship. And the number one thing I think that's most important for buyers to really do is they want to be confident. When they start going out and looking at homes with you, they want to know they're qualified to buy the home. It's not much fun to go and fall in love with the house and then find out that you can't afford it or
Yeah.
that you're not going to qualify for it.
Mhm.
So, what I do is it's education is key. I found that when you educate people and inform them, and they can make the best decision that is going to be right for them. They can
Mhm.
find out if we're a good fit. I want to find out if I'm a good fit with the buyer just as much as they want to find out if they're a good fit for me.
Yeah.
um, but generally speaking, a lot of lenders, I mean, anybody can quote you a rate. I mean, rates are rates. They're market driven. You're going to see, if you go online, you're going to see a lot of different quotes out there. It's marketing. That's why the quotes are being floated out there. They want you to pick up the phone and call them. But the bottom line is rates are rates.
Mhm.
And most lenders are going to be pretty darn comparable. It comes down to who you trust to hold your hand through the process and get you to the finish line smoothly, accurately, with lots of communication. And
Yeah.
so the process I go through is I do an initial interview with every one of my clients and really sit down with them and listen. I want them to tell me about their fears, what they've heard, what they want to accomplish in with their home buying process, with their mortgage. I really want them to share everything with me because then I can help counsel them best. From there, we do the pre-approval process, which is a thorough vetting of their financials, credit, um, and we do that because here in the Seattle area, or even just the Pacific Northwest in general, West Coast in general, it's a very competitive market.
Mhm.
And buyers, in many cases, are having to put themselves in positions where they are doing shorter closing time frames. They are putting up larger earnest money. They're waiving different contingencies like financing, for example. And I try to really put the client in the best possible position
Mhm.
to compete. And so what we do is we do a pre-underwrite up front, which is a thorough review of all the financials, the credit, and it's a pre-underwrite of the file. So it's the most thorough type of approval you can have going into that offer. Number one, it makes the buyer a lot more confident, and the seller also feels more confident when looking to accept that offer. It also helps on the back end because we've already done a good portion of the process up front. It allows for a smoother and quicker process on the back end into closing, so a buyer can worry about packing up their box and getting ready to move and look towards that.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned about kind of meeting with buyers. Are you doing this in person? Are you doing this via Zoom? Are you doing a phone call? I mean, how does that look like?
So I always prefer an in-person meeting. Now, a lot of buyers, due to their work schedules or commuting, and of course, recently coronavirus, that has made it be a lot more video conferencing. But I like that. I really push for that upfront video call or an in-person meeting, just because I feel like it's really important. This is the largest investment most people are going to make in their life. And they want to see me, they want to know who I am, and I want to be able to see them. And it's important to me that I'm able to see the reaction on their face if they really understood what I was telling them, because I think it's important that they understand that. And sometimes people are shy to admit that maybe they didn't understand something financial that you mentioned, and yet it is really important that they get it.
Yeah. So do you ever, I know sometimes with it being so competitive in Seattle, what are the things that you do? I mean, are you willing to, are you able to call the selling agent and speak to, on the client's behalf to try to, and talk about, the process that you've done to help give that seller confidence? Yeah, is that something
Yes,
that you do?
absolutely. I feel like, especially in a competitive market, that's really important. I consider myself a team member with the buyer's agent as well as that listing agent. If this is going to come together, we're all going to work together to fulfill our promises to our buyers and our sellers. And we all want to have a great experience for the buyer and the seller. So I think it's important to all get on board together and have that connection and be able to explain to the seller and the listing agent that the buyer, how qualified that buyer is, and that should they accept that offer, that they could confidently know that that buyer is going to be able to perform and close. I think that's really important. The listing agent's in a unique position because they have to go to their seller and recommend an offer. And so it's important for that listing agent to have the confidence and feel that if they recommend a certain offer, that they've done their due diligence and that offer is going to come together and they're going to sell their house.
Yeah. So, okay. So scenario. So, I've represented a buyer, you're the lender, we went out a competitive offer situation and, we finally have mutual agreement. What does that process look like after we've reached mutual acceptance on your end? Because I think a lot of my clients sometimes are like, okay, when can we close? Like the next day. And that's something that I think is always really good for people to understand. What exactly goes on behind the scenes
after that. So as I always say, that's when the exciting stuff happens, and we start the train and it starts moving very quickly. So I schedule a call or another video conference with the client as soon as they go into contract and I have a copy of that contract. I reach out to title and escrow because there's important documentation that they're going to give me as the lender that I'm going to need for the disclosures that go to the buyer. I then schedule a call with the buyer, and that's where we discuss and finalize all those financing details. That's when we go over the final loan amount, what loan program they're going to go with. We lock in the interest rate at that point because at that juncture, we now have a concrete closing date. That closing date, generally speaking, is going to be within 30 days. So when you lock a rate, so the market moves every day. Rates literally fluctuate throughout the day, much like stocks do. So it's important that once a buyer is in contract, we want to lock that rate. And the reason for that is a lot can happen over a 30-day period. And markets do ebb and flow, but what we don't want to do is, if we've qualified this buyer based on a 3.25 rate, and let's say something happens and the market gets away from us for 3 to 4 weeks, and now rates pop up to 3.5, and that payment's now uncomfortable for them. So that's why we lock them as soon as they go into contract, so that they can confidently know, hey, my payment is locked. And when you lock for 30 days. So that rate is guaranteed through that closing date, so that regardless of what happens in the market, the buyer is secure. We then issue the nice big packet of lending disclosures, which is required by federal regulation. And it includes a lot of different laws that lenders are under that we're just disclosing to the borrower: Equal Credit Opportunity Act, fair housing. It also gives them a breakdown of all of those industry standard third-party closing costs in a loan estimate, which is important for them to be able to view. It also gives them their estimated cash to close.
Okay.
And once they e-sign that, because that can all be done electronically, from there we order that appraisal. Appraisals can take anywhere from 10 to 14 days on a purchase. So it's important that gets ordered right away. While we're waiting on the appraisal to come back, we're going to be getting that loan file updated and ready to go back into underwriting for final approval, because now we have all the property info. We have the title report that goes with the property that the underwriter is going to want to review. At that point, we're also going to need to have like updated pay stubs, updated bank statements. The underwriter is going to re-review all of that. And then the appraisal, once it's complete, that meets up with the rest of the loan file, and we get final approval. About a week before closing, we'll have final approval, and we'll be issuing something that's called a closing disclosure. And essentially what that is, it's a confirmation of all of the initial loan disclosures that the borrower signed at the beginning of the process. But the closing disclosure gives the final breakdown and cash to close number for the borrower, so that they can start setting up their wire or cashier's check for escrow with their cash to close funds. Okay. It also gives them the time to ask any final questions or go through the documents, so they're not rushed having to do all that at their signing appointment. And then within that week, the escrow company will call them in to actually physically sign the loan documents in front of a notary. At that point, their money should be with the escrow company. And then the next day will be the official closing day. That's the day when the property gets recorded into the buyer's names. That's also the day that you get to hand them their keys and they become the owners of the house. So that's the finish line that we're all working towards.
Yeah, yeah. And then can you tell me, because I know, your role with Caliber, especially with Seattle being such a competitive market, do you feel like being with Caliber has ever given your clients a little bit of an edge, or the relationship, or because I think that's the other question that I get is, people definitely want a person, but then they also want a company as well. And so that would be kind of a good background, I think, for my clients to understand.
Absolutely. The quick answer is absolutely it does. I have built, much like you, we build our own businesses. Like, our clientele comes to us through referral and business relationships. So I always want to be at the mortgage banking firm where I feel like I can offer my clients the widest array of loan products at the most competitive pricing. Yeah. I also like the fact that we have a stellar reputation amongst the real estate community. We are the trusted name in the real estate community. Agents recognize us. They know that if they accept an offer from a client that's been pre-approved at Caliber, we prioritize that purchase. We are going to close that on time. And That's really important. And the other aspect too is, when clients are out there looking for different options, there's a few different ways people can get their loans. They can go to a bank, but that's like shopping in one store. They're very limited. There's one set of guidelines. There's one source of money. Whereas at Caliber, we have the full gamut. We have multiple different money sources that we're pulling from, and we have a larger array of guidelines, and we have expanded guidelines. So that can help a lot of clients that may not qualify for one program, but they'll qualify for another. The other two aspects that are really helpful in a competitive market is that our underwriting is handled locally. And that's a big thing. So the underwriters understand the needs of this market, and they understand the geographies of this market.
Yeah.
We also put together our own appraisal pool, which that consumers don't necessarily realize why that can be a big deal. But here's why it can. When you go to a lot of the large lenders like a Quicken or some of the big banks that are out there, they're using a national database of appraisers. So there might be 2,500 different appraisers in that database. The order is going to go to the first one that grabs the order. So you're getting the luck of the draw. Whereas my firm is a large enough company that we, per federal regulations, we're able to set up appraisal pools in each of our offices. So Seattle has its own appraisal pool. Kirkland has its own appraisal pool. And these appraisers that are in our pool are geographically competent and have been thoroughly vetted. While we still can't choose the exact appraiser that is going to go out and appraise a particular order, we know who's in that pool, and we're only going to assign them to appraise in an area that they have demonstrated they have expertise and experience appraising. Yeah. And that can make a very big difference. Appraisers that understand that west of this street means one thing and east of this street is a whole different type of a market. And we have those micro markets around the Puget Sound area.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating because, there have been times with clients that have, used a different financial institution, and we've been able to, to win out the contract. But it's funny because, what I find is that most selling agents or agents on the other side, their biggest request is, well, everything looks good, but you got to basically get your loan through Caliber because you guys do have that stellar reputation. And, it hasn't come up a lot, but I think it's come out 2 times so far. Both times the agents basically said, well, we want something from Caliber, which I thought was really interesting because, I think it just speaks to your guys' reputation.
Thank you.
I just actually had one more question too regarding the mortgages, because you mentioned something about offering the full gamut of products, and I think people sometimes don't understand what that means. Do you, especially here in Seattle and the greater Seattle area, what type of product are you seeing that really comes in handy that maybe is a little bit different than maybe your standard W-2 or conventional loan program? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, great question. Well, every buyer is different, and they're unique, and in different areas of Puget Sound. The buyer in Seattle, because it's a different price point, may be different than the buyer in a market like Tacoma. And that what's nice is we've got the full product line. So I might have a first-time home buyer who wants the down payment assistance program through the state bond loans, and that's a product that I offer. At the same time, I can also do a jumbo portfolio loan for a client that wants to buy a $5 million house in Medina, and that's going to fall under a completely different type of a loan product. But we'll range from, we do all the traditional loans, FHA, conventional, the bond programs to the jumbos and to the portfolio. And I think the portfolio really gives a lot more leeway to more non-traditional borrowers. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in Seattle.
Yeah.
We have a lot of self-employed people in Seattle, people that own a lot of rental properties. And sometimes they fall out of those typical traditional type program guidelines. And that's where the portfolio money can come in really handy to be able to place those clients. Due to coronavirus, there's definitely been there's a lot of changes that have come into play, and a lot of the portfolio programs have had major guidelines changes to them, but they're still out there and they still exist and we're still doing them. And I think no doubt those guidelines will open back up again once the markets settle down and people are getting back to work and so forth.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you back to kind of go through in detail the difference between like FHA and conventional.
Yeah.
And really kind of, what those portfolio loans really do look like. Because I think, just like you said, I've had a lot of clients that, own their own businesses or entrepreneurs, and that portfolio product really comes in handy when they're looking to, make one of the most, one of the largest financial decisions of their life. So
definitely.
Well, thank you so
I'd
much.
be happy to.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate having you here. And again, I think you're so great with the education process. I think something that someone told me that I always try to live by, and I think you do too, is that, we are our clients are the CEOs, but we're like we're the VP of finance, we're the VP of strategy, we're the VP of all of those things. We're there just like a president's cabinet to inform them, but ultimately they're the ones that need to make the decision. And I think that's one of the things that why I think we relate, is because we are very much the educator. We're very transparent. And at the end of the day, it's really up to our clients to make that decision, but to be in the best position possible. So.
I would agree with that. Yeah. People need to always do what's going to be best for them. And it's helpful to them if they are armed with all of the information that is going to help them make that best decision that's suitable for them.
Yeah. Well, on this video link, I'm going to put your information just in case anyone wants to reach out or whatnot. But thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure we will do this again.
That sounds great. Great to talk with you as always.
Yeah. See you later, Carese.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.